Hello everyone, my name is Nick, the EMF guy Pinot, and I'm the author of the Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs that I authored in 2017 that you can find in all good Amazon stores worldwide, and also the Electrosmog RX EMF course for health practitioners and health enthusiasts. You can find more about my work at electrosmogrx.com. And today I want to talk about low EMF saunas because it's clear that the saunas provide amazing health benefits, and among them detoxification from heavy metals and chemicals and all sorts of health benefits we'll get into with today's guest. But now more than ever, users of these saunas are concerned about the high levels of various kinds of EMFs, electromagnetic fields, such as electrical fields, magnetic fields, and dirty electricity that are emitted by the saunas. And they are concerned that, well, am I getting more benefits than harm? So I'm getting the infrared, which is good, and then I'm getting at the same time the non-beneficial waves, the harmful waves, which are the magnetic fields and electrical fields. So today I'm going to try to sort this out for you, but I won't be alone. I have the privilege to talk with Randy Gomm, who's the owner of Radiant Health Saunas and has been designing and has been selling infrared saunas since 1997 to a wide diversity of people for home and professional use. And his Radiant Health Saunas have been independently tested for volatile organic compounds, that's VOCs, to ensure non-toxicity and have extremely low EMF levels for a proven safe and effective infrared sauna experience. Randy, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick. It's a pleasure.
Well, we talked because we got introduced by a common friend, Molly, and I think you told me the story, but let's hear it again. How did you end up in the sauna business of all business choices?
Yeah, came as a surprise to me as well. I was a bit of a adrenaline junkie. I was on the Whistler Mountain Ski Patrol and the North Shore Mountain Rescue Teams, pretty active, and I was also a firefighter. But I was also quite a little bit ignorant, pretty mainstream, and all of a sudden I had musculoskeletal pain, difficulty walking, difficulty writing, couldn't hold on to a telephone, and they said I had fibromyalgia. So I kind of went along with that label. And fortunate for me, another fellow in my same crew about 8 months later came down with the same symptoms. So all of a sudden the light went on. Well, wait a minute, you got two healthy guys and neither of us can work. So I had an adipose tissue sample in a lab in the States called AccuChem Labs. Turned out I was very high in a chlorinated pesticide used in treating wood products. I was also high in heavy metal. So it wouldn't be fair to say all I did was the infrared sauna to get better, Nick. I did a bunch of things, but of all the modalities I used, it was the most effective on lowering my toxic load and reducing my pain level, allowed me to get back to work. So I got very passionate about the saunas.
This is tremendous. So you've experienced the benefits firsthand, and I have to say that the benefits and even the detoxification effect, some people are skeptical that this is really happening. Oh, we're not toxic, right? You hear that from skeptics. We're not toxic. Our body doesn't accumulate heavy metals and these toxins. Well, that's not true. That's actually a very unscientific thing to say, and I've heard an interview lately. People want to listen to it and look at it in the notes under this video. It's an interview between Dr. Mercola and Dr. Brian Walsh, who developed a course on detoxification, and he talks about, of course, toxification, right? And the fact that our environment is increasingly toxic, and the fact that sauna therapy, among other things, there are certain foods you can eat, there are certain things you can do, but sauna therapy is one of the best thing that you can do to get these toxins out via sweating. That is a normal pathway of the human body to get rid of toxins. Can you comment on the studies? Because I'm sure you hear that a lot. Well, do you have studies that prove that it's detoxing me? What does science say about that?
Well, the study shows just specifically, there's a lot of studies on sweating and heavy metals. I mean, and we've actually had, and you do sweat profusely in the infrared sauna. And there's not just one study on sweating and heavy metals. There's numerous studies if you go into PubMed or Medline. As you know, the interesting thing is we've had someone, let's say, have done a challenge test. It turns out they're high in lead or high in mercury. And rather than going the chelation route, they just did the sauna, and probably 5-6 months later, using the sauna about 5 times a week, they've usually brought the levels down by about 2/3. Now, that's just my personal feedback I've had from a number of people that have purchased a sauna. The advantage is, there's a lot of different conditions where people's toxic load is high, and whether it's Lyme disease or heavy metals, or just kind of go down the list of people that have that internal toxic environment. And unfortunately, they often have compromised phase 2 detox pathways. And so the advantage of the sauna, or the advantage of sweating, is you're bypassing your liver and kidneys. So you're getting out, not all of it, but you're getting out mostly through that means. And so for people that have compromised, like I said, detox pathways, it's very effective. So it's, they just have to go slow. If they're quite toxic, start off doing the sauna about every 3 days. You might do that for 3 or 4 weeks. Then every other day for 3 or 4 weeks, and then daily. And you just have to listen to your body, because to be fair, you are mobilizing some that the liver is having to deal with. And so if you go a little bit slower, it's just easier to take. But I've had many people, I thought it was the exception. I had this label of fibromyalgia, but I had a toxin problem, and I went to my first functional medicine conference in 1996, and brilliant researchers at the time, and kind of pushing the envelope, and they said it really didn't matter what label they put on their patients. And at the time they said fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, arthritis, just different things. They said the toxic load is too high, as you pointed out, almost like a rain barrel. And they said sometimes it's the final trigger that puts somebody over. It can be mercury from the mouth, it can be a car accident, it can be pesticide exposure. Boom, overflows the top of the rain barrel and puts pressure on the immune system, the thyroid, the digestive system. So I think we all would benefit from lowering our toxic load.
I totally agree. And to bring it back to EMF, because after all, I'm the EMF guy, well, the more toxic you are, generally, the more sensitive you get to these EMFs and to other toxins. So, for example, in studies by Dr. Dominique Belpom from France, he has studied people who are electrosensitive and looked at biomarkers that show that they are electrosensitive. And most of these people, or a large fraction of these people, are also MCS, multiple chemical sensitivity. So it goes hand in hand. So if you're listening to this and you feel hypersensitive to cell phones and Wi-Fi and to a lot of things in your environment, or even to chemicals, unloading these toxins from your body, and kind of imagine the stress bucket, right? The bucket is full, and when it overflows, these are the symptoms. To stop being symptomatic, you have to empty the bucket. So it is EMFs, it is heavy metals, it is the air quality, everything that you do in your everyday life, your water quality, but all these things matter. And the sauna, where it steps in, is to get this toxic load down. And throughout the course that I did in a collaboration with Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt, he mentioned, Dr. Klinghardt, that of course a heavy metal load is directly proportional usually to electrosensitivity, and there's good science to support that these two offenders of your body use the same pathway of oxidative damage and of body overload. So let's continue on the EMF route. Actually, it was Dr. Klinghardt, during an interview or a Q&A session I did lately, he told me something that honestly I do not agree with, and it is hard for me to say that because I respect him so much, but at the same time he might be wrong on certain things, and I want to make sure that we settle things today. He told me, Nick, there's no such thing as a low EMF sauna, and we both know that's not true. I don't agree, and please let us know what you think.
I appreciate that he might say that if that's his experience, okay? Because there's a lot of saunas on the market that advertise as low EMF, okay, or zero EMF, and they do. I won't mention any companies' names, but there's a number of them. So it was very important to me when we were engineering our sauna is to make sure it had as close to zero as possible, and we brought down the EMF and the EF, the electrical fields. And the trouble is that if some companies are doing testing and they say, hey, we have a low EMF sauna, they do something very, from my perspective, clever, but kind of unethical, is they just test the heaters at a lab in isolation. So they're not including the electrical connection and wiring. So if a sauna is to be tested, the whole sauna has to be tested. And if you're and everything should be under 2. In our case there, we would average 0.3 milligauss at point of body contact. That would be the average as far as the EMF, because you're taking averages, because as you know, this is your expertise. EMF drops off dramatically with distance. So someone can be testing the sauna and they walk in the door and it's 0, up the ceiling at 0. You can get a lot of reading in your sauna that's 0. Then you get to the wooden slats you lean against, which is point to body contact in the sauna. It could be 10 milligauss, but they can say the average is 2. So in our case there,
okay.
yeah, they do doing this. What in our case there, I made sure that I said, look, take over 100 readings in the sauna, but when you're taking averages, all those readings have to be at point of body contact. So when I'm telling someone it's averaging 0.3 milligauss, that's the environment we're sitting in. And the same with electrical fields, which are measured in volts per meter. Most of the companies aren't even addressing that. So to be fair to Dr. Klinghardt, he may have gone into a sauna that he's been told is low, and the EFs are off the chart, or the EMF is off the chart. So that's where I believe he's coming from. So in our case there, we eventually brought the electrical field levels down. The highest readings would be 0.7 volts per meter. So we kept bringing it down lower and lower, because we deal with a lot of people with sensitivity. Just as you pointed out, if they have MCS, chances are they'll react to EMF or electrical fields. The other issue to bring up is the VOCs. A lot of companies say they're non-toxic. Well, it's not that expensive to have your whole sauna tested. The same with EMF. Don't just test the heaters. The whole sauna needs to be tested, because I've taken some apart, and many of them will be using MDF board as a frame or plywood as a frame, which is off-gassing formaldehyde. So the advantage of having independent VOC testing is it's measuring parts per million, because if I'm selling to someone that has multiple chemical sensitivities, which I used to have, you have to make sure that it's a completely pristine, safe environment for them, you know.
So just going back to EMFs to give some context for people listening to this who might be lost between the different types of fields and whatnot. We have the magnetic fields, right? If you read my book or look at what I talk about, the magnetic fields, oftentimes they are created by, let's say you have an alarm clock. The magnetic field is around something electric or electronic, and it drops very fast. But people usually are bothered by magnetic fields, or let's say the safety levels by building biology during the day would be 1 milligauss, and if possible lower than that at night. So to give you some context, 0.3 is very good when it comes to the sauna, and it means that someone electrosensitive at 0.3, they could maybe still feel it, but it is a tremendously low level for something that is plugged into the power grid. So it is nearly impossible to have zero magnetic fields and zero electrical fields. And Randy mentioned another number, which is 0.7 volts per meter for electrical field.
Is the highest reading.
The highest reading. Okay.
Yeah.
So the building biology movement, and for example, the most stringent guidelines by environmental medicine, for example, the European Academy for Environmental Medicine recommends 1.5 volt per meter at night for sensitive groups. So in that case, it means that technically you could sleep in your sauna, which I probably don't recommend, but you would still have an healing environment with no electrical fields. And that's another type of field. The electrical fields are different. It is a field that irradiates, for example, from the walls in your home. Just because you have wiring 6 to 8 feet out, you have an electrical field. And how you can measure it is two ways. You can measure it with a meter, say, okay, there are electrical fields in the air. And the second thing you can do is the body voltage method, where you look at what voltage is essentially kind of low grade shocking me right now, giving me a low grade electric shock. And some people are very sensitive to just proximity to these fields. So this is why when you purchase a sauna, that is a huge investment. This is why people are kind of getting on board with the idea, well, I might as well get something that doesn't have these fields, because you're trying to heal, right? And when it comes to VOCs, I must say, Randy, I'm not an expert by any means about air quality and air pollution. Let us know what VOCs are, and also what different chemicals can be found in saunas that, let's say, do not look at this aspect of the quality.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that would be, VOCs stand for volatile organic compounds, and they measure parts per million. And there's a lot of different chemicals that would fall into that category, but probably the biggest one that you run into would be formaldehyde, because often that's hidden in the frame. So to be fair, you look inside and you think, wow, it's really wood. And I've taken 3 of them apart, and I won't mention any names, but and it was fascinating because 2 of them were using MDF board, which stands for multiple density fiber board, which off gases. There's lots of research showing how badly it off gases formaldehyde, and the other one was a low grade plywood. Again, off gases formaldehyde. So it's kind of, it's not that expensive to have your whole sauna tested for VOCs. It's the same as not that expensive to have the whole sauna tested for EMF. So if you're talking to any company and you say, please provide me with the testing, and then you have to actually put the legwork in to look at the testing closely to say, wait a minute, do they actually have an independent lab test the whole sauna, or just parts in isolation? Because that's the concern, and that's what's going on in the industry, and maybe that's why Dr. Klinghardt mentioned that, because that's what's happening in the industry. You know?
So VOCs can be different types of chemicals, and off-gassing, the way I understand it, is simply you have a plywood board that has been painted over, or maybe there was some sort of treatment made to the wood, and now this chemical doesn't stay into the wood. It kind of dissipates in the air over time, and if you're in the sauna, you will be exposed to these fumes. And this is something that is true also of carpeting and different types of paint. You have low VOC paint. I know we use zero VOC paint. That was it was not easy to apply. It wasn't the best paint, but at least it was healthier for our kid Elliot, who we painted this entire room, and we didn't want him to be breathing that stuff over and over. So this is really why it matters. And people, just like certain people are very sensitive to EMFs, certain people are very sensitive to these fumes, and you don't want to have the side effects of the chemicals while you're trying to do your sauna therapy. So that's another concern. And how are you able? Go ahead.
I was thinking too, whether it's people that have electromagnetic sensitivities or people that have chemical sensitivities with MCS, I still view them as the canaries. It doesn't mean that it's doing the rest of us any good. So it's actually good. It's unfortunate what they have to deal with, but it's very good. It should be a big red flag to the rest of us and say, okay, the toxic load is too high. And even when I was young, there was no such thing as leukemia wards for kids, but there is now. And I believe it's because everybody's toxic load is too high, and they have the plastics and the phthalates, and just go down the list of things that we're exposed to.
This is a great point, Randy, and what Dr. Walsh said in this interview I referred to a little bit sooner in this interview with Dr. Mercola, is that these toxins do accumulate in the human body, and most people eventually get a toxic load. It's not a scientific fact, so much that new cord blood has been newborn cord blood has been found to contain many chemicals, up to more than 100 chemicals. And these were studies at, I think it might have been the University of Montreal, or several studies in Quebec. Yeah. So it is very concerning that these chemicals are in us even from day one now. And in adults, they do accumulate. They might be present in your blood in certain cases because they are water soluble, like glyphosate and certain pesticides and certain chemicals. And in certain cases, they are enclosed in your fat tissues. And this is, I think, where the sauna therapy infrared can be very powerful to get these toxins out of your fat tissue, because these toxins are fat soluble and they tend to bioaccumulate in your fat storage. And it is a fact that detoxification has also a link with weight loss. It seems, I mean, I don't want to make all sorts of claim, but do you know of studies around infrared therapy and weight loss too? Because I think it is. I've seen some things about that.
Yeah. It's a tough one, because the Journal of American Medical Association show for every gram of sweat you produced, you burned so many kilocalories. I'm a little bit guarded with weight loss. I've found that some people have lost a marked amount of weight, and some people haven't. But so it's always, I believe it's a good part of a weight loss program. But what you're saying is true as far as the fat cells. There's a theory out there, and it's just a theory, is that many people that are toxic, you actually hold on to the fat cells because it's holding on to the toxins. And then that's why some people go through a fast or something and they're getting major Herxheimer reactions, headaches and things, because you're actually dumping some toxins out. Well, it's the same thing in the sauna. It's been fascinating because I deal with a lot of practitioners. I've sold to over 1,000, which is good because you're always getting feedback, and that's how we worked on the design. And some of the ones, they'll tell me, they say, Randy, the stuff that's coming out in people's towels, you won't believe it. You have brown marks and black marks and yellow marks. It shows you the amount of stuff that's dumping from people, and it's just one of those things. And as you use the sauna more, of course, you're dumping less and less. So it's been fascinating to see. In the far infrared, someone asked me the other day, and they said, well, this far infrared sauna, what range is that in? And I said, well, it's something that we're always exposed to. When you feel heat from someone else's body, that's in the 6 to 20 micron wet level, and that is in the far infrared range. When you're laying on the sand on the beach in the summertime and you're feeling that radiant heat coming up, that's far infrared. So it's something we're exposed to a lot. It's not like microwaving your body. And then there's a bit of, if you're willing, I wouldn't mind talking about near versus far infrared as well.
Let's get into it. Actually, I was having a conversation 15 minutes before we jumped on with one expert that I follow in environmental medicine, and she told me how confused she is around the claims that are made. Near infrared is better. No, you should do near infrared plus red light therapy. No, you should do the far infrared. I don't know myself, so I'm open to what's your opinion on this.
Okay. Well, what I did is, before I was a firefighter, I used to be a biologist, so I never minded doing research. So I went into PubMed and Medline and looked at all the research papers on near infrared, and it's good. Shows wound healing, mitochondria function improvement, a lot of stuff. But all the studies were done on either light-emitting diodes in the 630 to 940 nanometers range. That's some in the near infrared and some in the red range, or in lasers, okay? And there was something very specific. It's not just the intensity and frequency that was so important of the lights they were using. There's something called the inverse square law from a light source. You think, well, what is that? Now, I know you know about it because of EMF, but if let's say if you're 6 inches away from a light source versus 1 inch away, you go 6 times 6 is 36. You put a 1 over top, you're only getting 1/36th the intensity. If you're 10 inches away, you're only getting 1/100th the intensity. So to me, saying, hey, whether you've got a full spectrum sauna or you have a near infrared sauna, unless all those studies that I'm referring to, they're either touching the petri dish or touching the skin or extremely close to it, okay? And so to be 6 inches away or 10 inches away, are you getting any benefits of these lights at all? So whether you have a hidden bank of lights behind the wall somewhere, so you can say, hey, we have near infrared, or you might have big bulbs, for instance, okay, like light bulbs you get at a hardware store. Now, sometimes the amount of frequency that are in those bulbs are only about 15% in the correct frequency, and because they're hot, you have to be, either 20 inches away or 24 inches away. So again, because of the inverse square law, you're not getting the benefits of that research. So it's kind of, I'm a great fan. I have a light emitting diode paddle myself. If you have an injury, apply it. It works really well in that 630 to 940 nanometers. But I don't think it's correct to take that research and then say it applies to this infrared saunas. All the research I can find on infrared saunas and the benefits are all in the far infrared range. And there's things like nitric oxide production, arthritis study, another one, congestive heart failure. There's a lot of studies there in the far infrared range. I wasn't able to find one study in the near infrared range. So I'm a great fan of near infrared. I just not regarding the saunas. And so for detoxification, penetrating that 1.5 to 2 inches in the tissue, mobilizing toxins, and other health benefits of the infrared, I just think that's the way to go. If someone, I kind of wrote an article, put it on my website, and was waiting for someone to challenge me to say, okay, here's a research paper to kind of disagree with what you're saying or whatever. And it's been out there for about 8 months, and people may not agree with it, but I just said, look, show me one research paper on near infrared and saunas. And so far, I haven't been able to find one. So as far as the saunas go, the the research that continues to come out in red light and light emitting diodes in that frequency is great research, but just can't take that research and say it applies to the sauna, in my humble opinion anyway.
And something that I think really corroborates what you said is a book called Red Light Therapy by Ari Whitten, and he has written it's a tremendous resource on another type of device, that is these red light therapies and oftentimes near infrared devices. So a red light panel with LEDs on there that you use for what's called photobiomodulation. So to really, it can be used for skin quality, it can be used for wound healing that you mentioned, it can be used for overall mitochondrial function and energy, for mood enhancement, so a lot of different things. But what he mentions is that you have to pick the right lights at the right intensity, or else you're standing 2 feet from them and you get zero benefit. So I think that these two, the best thing that I found is probably have one sauna for the far infrared, and then have a red light therapy which has other usage. So I think these two things.
I agree with you. Yeah. That's I think is the way to go. To me, it's don't try to bring one to the other. And if it's kind of like, and you have to be careful. There's some companies out there that have these big heaters, okay, and they say, hey, it's full spectrum, give the heat. Well, it'd be like you and I, from my perspective, it'd be like you and I going to Costco and buying a hot air heater that covers a bunch of spectrums, nobody making any health claims about it. So that's where I'm coming from, is that you have to have research that supports what you're doing, is not the apples and oranges saying, well, I'll take this research and say it applies here, So it's kind of, and the other thing with the near infrared, done with light emitting diodes and lasers, it doesn't actually heat up the core temperature. So the advantage in the sauna, of course, is that we're sweating. Now, to be fair, these hot bulbs that they have that are, let's say, that 15% in that correct range, they will heat up the air and you will sweat, okay? But you also sweat in the conventional sauna. So I'm just not, to me, as far as the infrared go, the far infrared is what the research supports in sauna use.
That's tremendous. We agree on that, and just want to close this interview by just going over the process that you use to test these saunas for EMFs, because you mentioned to me that certain manufacturers, and I don't know which, I don't want to make it sound as every other company but yours is evil or whatever, but I know that certain people take shortcuts and will have their saunas tested for EMFs by the manufacturers, then receive them, and maybe they would have been tested like every other unit, or certain units are not tested. How does that work exactly in the industry?
Well, you're right. Sometimes they'll randomly pull units out on the assembly line, any manufacturing process. So in our case there, we made sure that every sauna is tested. I know the serial number of the sauna, and I can pull and to see what the data was, both on the EMF and electrical field, because I sell to a lot of people that have sensitivity, so we have to be very careful. I can't say, well, geez, every 12 sauna was randomly pulled out. Every sauna needs to be tested. And it's tough because, it's requiring somebody to ask for the company for testing, any company. You're right, there are other companies besides mine that are doing a lot of the testing. But you have to look at it closely. It doesn't matter what they tell you or what's on the website. Look at it closely at the testing and say, okay, is this just a heater? Okay. Or did the company actually test the sauna and show where they tested it? Because that's what you want. You want to be sitting in that environment, not have to presume, well, I know they test the heaters and chances are the sauna is pretty good too. Well, they're missing a whole bunch of other components that may give off high EMF or electrical fields, right? So it's,
that's a great point.
It's something that I went into it cautiously. I didn't have a background in sales. It helped me. And then I thought, okay. And I get a lot of feedback from the practitioners and say, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that. When we started, oh, sorry there.
That's all good.
A cat behind me and I have a dog over here, right? He wants to be let out.
Yeah, he wants to be on the internet. That's good.
The cat, I wasn't expecting the cat to get up there too, but anyway.
That's a good
Thanks.
one. So just to summarize for people, if you want to look for a quality sauna, Radiant Health Saunas, I think, Randy, you have done a tremendous job. You are very open to your processes and how they're tested. You're an open book, and that I appreciate a lot. There's also a coupon code that you've given for $500 off a sauna, and that's Nick, NICKRHS. So NICKRHS is going to be also below this video. So I just want to mention it. It's not a huge infomercial for your saunas. In reality, I wanted to know more about how they're tested and what to look for. So if I can summarize for people who listen to the entire interview, what to look for is you want to have magnetic fields and electrical fields that have been tested, which is the case for your saunas, but oftentimes manufacturers will claim, well, it's low EMF, but they only mean low magnetic fields. And electrical fields can be bothersome if you have sensitivities. And for all of us who might not feel sensitive, well, you don't want more of them either way. So you want to reduce, as a preventative measure, your EMF exposure throughout your everyday life. And I think that having a low EMF sauna and making sure that every health tool that you purchase is low EMF is just the intelligent thing to do. The second thing is that you want to make sure that every sauna is tested and not just pulled randomly out of the assembly line. So that's something that you do as well. So something to ask any manufacturer, Randy, you don't have to ask, it's going on, but any company that you want to reach out to, is every sauna tested? And a third thing is, are only the panels tested just when it's not, or just the heaters, or the entire sauna the way it's wired? So that's very important also in a real world setting. And the fourth thing, for me, it's not about EMFs, but VOCs, right? Sometimes we just talk about EMFs. I don't think about the chemicals, but it's important also that you're going to be investing in a sauna that you want also these zero VOC readings. So that's something that in the Radiant Health Saunas you'll find. So Randy, do you have anything else to add before we go?
No, just it was a pleasure being on with you, and I was pleased recently. There was a Finnish study came out a couple of years ago, and this isn't to do with infrared, just to do with conventional sauna use. What I was pleased was they showed the incidence over 20 years. They showed that these are middle-aged men. They showed that if they used the sauna 2 or 3 times a week, it increased longevity by 24%. If they used the sauna 4 times a week or more, it increased it by 40%. And I thought, wow, if there's something you can do that tells you, and this is for all-cause mortality, that you could, if you did something 4 times a week, it could increase your longevity by 40%. You just go, oh, So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that the sauna use, even if you don't get a sauna from me, even just use a conventional sauna on a regular basis, it is beneficial for our health.
This is a great message, and I think that just sweating a lot, that's something I need to do more of. Sweating is just normal. It's something we don't do every day, so a sauna can help you tremendously get more bang for your buck and really speed up the process also. So I can't wait to invest for a sauna myself. Unfortunately, I don't think I have the space. My wife wouldn't be pleased to have it in the middle of the living room, but in the near future, I'll put it this way, I will invest, and your sauna will be on top of my list of prospects.
Okay, thanks. And people can just plug them in. Just doesn't need any special plumbing or wiring. They can just plug them into an outlet. So
amazing.
Thanks so much for having me on, Nick.
Thank you so much, Randy. Have a great day.
All right.
Bye-bye.